I've been on the move, keeping away from the law and living hotel to hotel under different names. I woke up this morning to find a thick fog over the city, which works in my favor as it'll make it harder to find me if local authorities are searching. I was about to check out when I got a call from the front desk that someone dropped off something for me. I was confused but went to go receive it. Whatever it was. It may have been stupid to do, but my curiosity was piqued. Unplugged and wrapped my charger up, putting away my things into my backpack. I sighed as I looked into the pocket in my bag. Every single cent I owned now resided in there. It was a depressing thought. My earthly belongings on my back. I left the room and hid my face beyond the surgical mask. I went down to the desk, checking out and receiving this package they spoke of. I froze when I was handed a filthy portable DVD player and a disc with the words, "Cammy Candy" in Mindful Escape. I tried to hide my anxious persona as I put everything on my back, then headed on my way. I hurriedly went into the brush. It'd be a while until the cops found me as I'd been reading their updates on the situation. They were in the town over. What happened that night had me breaking news apparently. I shook my head, hurrying up a hill and into a grassy area. I took out the DVD and the portable player. I removed my mask, getting a tissue from a pocket in my bag, then spitting on it so I could at least see the screen. I wiped it off, but I was in a hurry. The screen and the DVD scanner was far more important than the shell outside. I was shaking so bad that I nearly dropped the CD. I knew someone had sent this to me. They knew what happened somehow. I was happy to see the light in the player turn on, hoping nobody would find me up there when I pressed play. It was chilly out, so I zipped up my coat and stuffed my hands into my pockets as the title card flickered onto the screen. Cammy Candy in Mindful Escape was in big letters next to a drawing of Cammy still giving a wave but looking down, unfocused, as if she was deep in thought about something else that was bothering her. The episode began. Cammy was staring out a window into a beautiful garden below. She turned to the door as we hear a click, then footsteps. A nurse walks in with Edgar, of whom cheerfully says, "I'm busting you out, Cam." Cammy chuckled at this, but her smile fell. She looked sad and then thought. Edgar looked worried, but instead of pressing, he helped her up, then allowed her to take care of business before they left. She left the room with him, and we cut to the outside. Edgar and Cammy are walking side by side. Edgar was talking about what a lovely day it is, but Cammy isn't responding. She's distant. "Cammy, hello? You in there?" Edgar asked, tapping on her head, which seemed to snap her back into reality. Sorry, Edgar. I was just thinking," came her response. Edgar frowned when he looked to her, knowing something was wrong. "Hey, you couldn't have done anything, and you were rightfully angry. That guy was due for a pummeling anyways." Cammy gasped and elbowed Edgar sharply, which made him recoil a little. "I didn't just pummel him though. I murdered him in cold blood. I wanted to do it again too. How does that make me any better than him?" I glanced around to scan the area. When I felt it was clear, I continued watching. "Cammy, people make pretty awful and terrible mistakes, but it doesn't make you a bad person for making those mistakes. It'll be okay. It's over now, and you can't fix that, but you can come home with me, and we can watch our show with some good food." He grinned at this. Cammy held herself. "Like old times?" she asked hopefully. Edgar smiled and confirmed, like old times. They then walked back to his house. We have another cut. Cammy is at Edgar's house. She's in the bathroom, checking her teeth in the mirror. She seemed really fascinated with them, touching the points on them. She appeared to be anxious, tears spilling down her cheeks as flashes of what had happened filled the bathroom she's in. Her hands covered in a dark liquid, her mouth covered in the same, and her eyes wild. She gasped when she saw herself in the mirror, bursting out sobbing. Edgar knocked, asked her if she was all right, then came in to see Cammy sobbing on the floor of his bathroom. Edgar looked concerned, but comforted her while picking her up and carrying her into the living room. I noticed my heart was pounding in my chest. Tears were running down my cheeks too. I was holding myself. I hadn't even realized what was happening, but I wiped away my tears and shoved my cold hands back into my coat pockets. Cammy and Edgar were talking about that night. Cammy explained her flashes and begged Edgar to promise to never tell. Edgar crossed his heart, then hugged her. Cammy thanked him for being a good friend, and he patted her back while saying, "Of course, what's a lovely woman without a dopey friend?" Cammy chuckled and told him he wasn't dopey. Some light-hearted teasing ensued, then they watched their show. Day turned to night in the show. The sound of a heartbeat echoed through the speakers. Cammy opened her eyes wide. She was breathing shallow breaths, choking back sobs while she stumbled to the bathroom. She washed her face, but she just ended up sobbing uncontrollably. Edgar came in as she proceeded to vomit from the stress. Edgar cleaned her up, sitting with her all night to comfort her. The next morning, we watch as they leave the house. Cammy had her arm hooked with Edgar's as they headed into town. Cammy was actually excited, eager to see other people again, but the town was not excited to see her. Those who knew her were friendly, but rumors had already begun to spread. Some people glared at her as they passed in the background, while some looked at her with pity. They were shopping for food. Edgar told Cammy that the nurse told him that he should stay with her for a while until she can handle being on her own. Cammy asked him when, and he explained that he called to tell the doctor about what was happening with her. Cammy sighed, saying something about being a psycho. I wasn't paying much attention. Some deers were passing by. It was actually really beautiful, but terrifying because the male was staring me down. They did not engage me though, just watched me then headed on their way. My attention was caught by the screen again. Cammy and Edgar were talking about cheering her up. Cammy was struggling with feeling worthy of happiness. I started getting these flashes of terror whenever people glared at Cammy. They only glared, but it set off alarms in me for some reason. Then night came. Cammy had wanted to sit on the porch and enjoy the stars. That's when she heard it. "Hello?" she called out, hearing someone call out from the forest. She stood up, worried she was having flashbacks again, but she heard it again. She grabbed the burning candle and some matches, then headed into the forest around Edgar's little cabin. She hurried to the source of the screaming, stumbling while calling out to the person. In the distance, one could faintly hear Edgar calling for her, but she was too focused on helping whoever was screaming. She reached the clearing, seeing a person on the ground. "Are you okay?" she asked, inching towards them. "Hello?" she asked, reaching out to touch them when the person whipped around and grabbed her wrist. "Gotcha," he yelled out, some other people exiting the forest around him. Cammy screamed out for Edgar, but was silenced. I could feel her terror inside of me. It was suffocatingly strong. They started talking about how she was probably a monster or a demon from hell. They had heard she murdered her friend and a random man to cover her tracks. I thought it was stupid to believe that, but then again, I had seen what happened. She tried to steady her breathing, some others holding her down while one of them grabbed the gun to shoot her with. The moment the gun came out, I knew it was over. Cammy immediately bared teeth, reaching around and tearing off the cheek of the man beside her. He screamed, then released her. She then proceeded to go ballistic when the guy with the gun fired and grazed her arm. He kept shooting at her, but she was quick. By the time he had a clear shot of her, he was out of bullets. He backed up, looking around at the man he brought with him to murder her. They were dead all around him, mangled and torn up. He watched Cammy get up, wiping blood off her mouth. She looked at him, those horrible eyes looking his way as she began walking towards him. He screamed out loud, but his shot rang through the clearing. The man fell onto his face to reveal Edgar with his shotgun. He was panting, walking towards Cammy and viewing the carnage. "Cam," he trailed, getting a good look at her face to see her terrible eyes. He hugged her, and I felt the fear begin to wash away. Edgar brought her home and had her clean up while he took care of the bodies. When he came home, he looked horrified. Cammy, his best friend, had murdered all of those men in cold blood. He just seemed to be looking down then at the bathroom door. He did this a few times until Cammy walked out in a rather skimpy nightgown. Edgar didn't seem fazed. He checked to see how she was feeling. Cammy hugged him, apologizing, but Edgar shushed her, then told her to sleep it off. She obeyed and Edgar took a shower. It cut to Cammy, hugging a pillow with fear in her eyes. Tears cascaded down her cheeks. She stared out the window to see the ghostly corpses of the men she had murdered, mangled and watching her, even as Edgar entered the room to sleep by her side, so she would be protected. They remained as a permanent reminder of what they had done that night. The title card signified the end of the episode. Cammy holding her head with a terrified expression as horrifying ghosts reached for her. The end song was soft, yet upbeat. It was all unnerving, and I had questions. That guy had said that there were no more episodes after Secret Sweetheart, so where did this come from? Somebody knows what happened, but I don't know who, and I'm afraid to find out. How did they find out where I was? Are they following me? I looked around, packing up my shit. I needed to get to the next hotel before nightfall, or else I was gonna be in danger. I hurried. Buses, cabs, and hitchhiking was all I had. I luckily made it into the hotel at the correct time. I checked in, then went into my room. I didn't go to any particularly nice hotels or I would be caught immediately, so I had to check the room for bed bugs and other creatures. After killing a roach or two, I got into bed. It was 2:23 a.m. when I heard a commotion outside my door. I felt that strong fear when my door busted open to reveal a guy with a gun. He shot at me, missing anything vital but definitely leaving a mark as it grazed my side. I hurried out of bed, finding a place to hide. This jackass was planning on killing me, so he could tell the police and be some hero or whatever. I held my side, watching as he looked around my room for me. The maid came up, then saw us and tried to run when this man grabbed her and said he'd frame me for murder if I didn't come out. I knew at that moment that this guy was a complete idiot, but I also knew that he was in for a world of hurt. I felt the fear engulf me. Then, when I opened my eyes, his dead body was on the carpet, guts spilled out onto the floor. I took the fastest shower of my life, got my shit, then ran. I had to make up a new alias. I heard the police in the distance. I booked it until I couldn't hear them anymore, and even then, I kept running. Luckily, this phone has enough charge to last me, but until then, I'm turning it off. Every time I watch that show, somebody ends up dying, and when I kill that person, I always feel a strong emotion correlating with the episode. What the hell is this? I feel like I can't escape her. I feel like this cartoon has me trapped.